All right, everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. I'm Chair Wells. Today is Wednesday, February 25th, 2026. And we will begin with our first bill hearing, HB 1001, Delegate Jones. I believe her staff is here to present the bill. So if you could please bring up your panel as well, that'd be great. Thank you. And I think I have a, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Continue.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Josh Paper. I'm here representing Delegate Dana Jones, who represents District 30A in the House of Delegates. Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee, I'm here today to introduce House Bill 1001, Election Law, Local Board of Elections Employees Authority at Polling Places. Delegate Jones has introduced this this legislation alongside a sponsor amendment that should be in everyone's floor systems that limits the scope of the extension of authority to only local election directors and the state administrator of elections. Under current law, only election judges can maintain order and manage observers inside polling locations. The bill before you today, brought to Delegate Jones by the Maryland Association of Election Officials, who I have here with me today to answer any questions, is a narrow and targeted update which would grant local election directors and the State Board of Elections Administrator some of the same authority that election judges currently have. A little bit of the reason for the bill. According to a 2024 survey by the Brennan Center for Justice, nearly 3 in 4 election officials feel that threats against them have increased in recent years. And since 2020, 92% of local election officials have taken actions to increase election security for voters, workers, and election infrastructure. These feelings are not unfounded. In 2024, Harford County election officials experienced increased verbal and written threats, leading to the county to install bulletproof glass at the election office. The increased harassment has also led, in part, to an increase in turnover among election judges. Therefore, a smaller percentage of judges are experienced with de-escalating and managing behavior at polling locations. HB 1001 and the accompanying amendment will extend some of the same existing authority of election judges to keep the peace at polling locations to the local Board of Elections Director and the State Administrator of Elections. Like I said, in some cases, these local board employees and the local elections directors have received the same, if not more, training and are properly prepared to assist local judges where needed. Delegate Jones is proud to, again, have worked with the Maryland Association of Election Officials on the bill and to have Senator Kagan as a cross-file in the Senate. This is timely and important measure to protect those that facilitate our democracy, and Delegate Jones humbly requests a favorable report from the committee on HB 1001 as amended.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Paper. And Mr. Perrone, is that correct? I have Aaron Perrone. Are you?
No, Chair Wells. My name is Stephen Ferris. I am the Vice Chair of the Legislative Committee of the Maryland Association of Election Officials.
Okay, and you're just here to answer questions?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, friends. I'm looking at this bill, and there's one area that I kind of stuck out as I was reading it last night, and it has to do with requiring challengers. So I've been a poll watcher before for various candidates in my elections. And there's a requirement that says that they have to arrive at the polling place 30 minutes prior to its opening in order to be admitted. What was in your estimation, what was the impetus behind why we put that requirement in place?
You want to answer?
Yeah. So that requirement is strictly to observe the opening of the polls. After that, challengers and watchers can go as they please, with their papers and credentials. To be able to open and observe that opening process requires the 30 minutes prior. Gotcha. So basically it's a logistical issue of getting, like, if somebody comes in and says, I want to see how the polls open, and they're a poll watcher. If they come less than 30 minutes, then they're not able to observe that process. They need to be there at least 30 minutes before. Otherwise, while the polls are open, again, they can come and go as they please. There is a similar mirrored process for closing. They need to be in the polling place 30 minutes prior to closing to observe that closing process. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Tomlinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just trying to understand the significance or the need for this. So why is it not enough that an election judge has authority already? Why do we need local board employees to also have this authority?
Want to speak to your experience, or?
Sure. So in the local boards and with our directors, we do have more subject matter expertise and are often on the ground in the polling places in managerial capacities. And this is simply acknowledging that expertise and experience and deferring to the staff in place in lieu of the election judges, who often, when we are on site, are deferring to the election directors and the local boards of elections.
Yeah, so I understand. I mean, I definitely understand wanting to give that authority to the election director for the county, and probably deputy administrator, whatever the titles are. I guess why are we just giving it to? So right now, I mean, the way the bill's written, it's any person that works for a local board of elections.
So as the way a local board employee is how it was introduced, and now with the sponsor amendment that we've added that should be in there, it would be strictly the local board of elections director or the state administrator of elections.
Okay. Sorry, I was reading and not paying attention while you were
No
speaking.
problem.
my mistake. Okay, so it has been narrowed down.
Yeah, so it's been narrowed
Sorry about that.
significantly. All good?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Seeing no more questions for the bill sponsor or for the sponsor panel, we'll move on to unfavorable testimony. We have Mr. David Morrisberger. Don't know if he's here in person. All right, they are not here. So with that, we will, that concludes our bill hearing on HB 1001. Thank you very
Madam Chair.
much. We'll move next to HB 978, Delegate, Miracle North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I bring my panel up?
Yes, you may. I have Miss Holly Borgman. Good to
Yes,
see you
my
again. Jacob Parker, Mark Feinroth, and Frank Boston.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, am I timed for this one? I see.
No, you're not
Okay, just want to
timed.
make sure. Okay, thank you, Chair Wells and esteemed members of the newest and coolest committee, Government, Labor, and Elections. I'll claim that. I'm Delegate Bernice Miracle North. I represent District 14 in Montgomery County, and I come before you today on House Bill 978, Home Security System Expenses, Campaign Funds, and Reimbursement. And colleagues, this is, honestly a response to some of my constituents' concerns for my safety as a candidate and for so many candidates across this state. In Maryland and throughout the country, elected officials are facing a troubling rise in threats and harassment directly tied to their public service. These threats extend to spouses, children, and loved ones. According to a national reporting, more than 40% of state legislators are experiencing threats or attacks in recent years. And some of you may or may already know, national news, in 2025, Melissa Hortman, the late Melissa Hortman, former Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, and her husband were brutally murdered in their home. That same gunman also attacked another member of the Minnesota Senate and his wife, who survived, and I just heard recently returned to the Chamber of Minnesota. These tragedies really underscored the risk public servants like us, who are part-time legislators, face. And having a bill like this shows that in the midst of all the stresses of having these threats upon us, it's still okay to serve. And we shouldn't be afraid to serve because of indifferences that are leading to threats upon us as public officials. At the federal level, there's recognition that these threats require practical solutions. Federal candidates are currently permitted to use campaign funds for security expenses, and members of Congress actually receive a monthly stipend that can be used for security expenses to protect their homes and families. State lawmakers also face the same dangers, but we don't have the same tools. And that's why we're bringing this bill. Currently under Maryland law, expenditures for home security systems, alarm monitoring and the like are prohibited, but if there is a reason for it, that actually is allowed. And I just talked to Jared Demarinis, our state administrator for the Board of Elections, this morning. He clarified for me that it is allowed if there's a reason for it, particularly for our safety. But what this bill is doing is basically making a law so we don't have to provide that reason for the State Board of Elections. And so House Bill 978 is offering a modest solution to protect us as candidates. It will allow members of the General Assembly to use up to $1,000 in campaign funds to defray the cost of home security expenses at their residence, and that's over a 4-year period. It would also provide a reimbursement for up to $1,000 during a member's term for those that have used their personal funds to install a security measure. Maryland is not alone taking this step. I know Holly will speak to the number of states that are currently looking at doing this for their state legislators, but currently California, Louisiana, Minnesota, Illinois, and South Dakota explicitly permit candidates and office holders to use campaign funds for security and alarm system expenses for themselves and their immediate family members. And I believe their amounts are a little bit higher than what we are proposing today in this bill. So I would ask for your favorable report on House Bill 978, and I'll turn over to my panel. I'll start with Holly.
Thank you, Chair Wells, members of the committee, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this important bill forward. One need only pick up the newspaper to see that threats against elected officials are on the rise. I'd venture a guess that some people in this building have been on the receiving end of threats and harassment. The Brennan Center for Justice reports that more than 40% of state legislators nationwide have experienced threats or attacks in recent years. And just last month, the U.S. Capitol Police reported that they saw a 50% increase in threats in 2025 over the previous year, which is just unacceptable. The concern for safety among public officials has only grown after the horrific murders in Minnesota. Now, too often at ADT, I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs at ADT, I receive calls from elected officials who have been threatened or members of the staff who need security assistance. And every time they say the same thing, it's not myself that I'm worried about, it's my family, when they leave their families to work in the state capitals. You know, this could be whether they're receiving a threat at their office, or sometimes they get an indirect threat called pizza doxing, where a pizza is sent to a candidate's home to show that the person making the threat knows where the person lives and can get to them. A number of states have already voted to allow the use of campaign funds or public dollars to pay for security, and a number of other states are considering it this year, including Kentucky, Utah, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Georgia, and Oregon. Oregon just heard the bill today. No security system is fail-safe, but recent advances in technology allow residents to check surveillance cameras if they hear an unexpected noise, or talk through a video doorbell instead of answering a door to a stranger. The video clips can then be preserved and sent to law enforcement for investigation, and homes can be monitored when candidates are away. Regardless of political beliefs, no one should have to choose between the safety of their family and the right to engage in the political process. And if committed Marylanders are driven out of politics by fear, we will all miss out on the unique perspectives they could have brought to the table. On behalf of ADT, I thank you and ask for a favorable vote.
Yep. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Frank Boston III. I am here and on behalf of ADT in support of this bill. Thank you very much to our sponsor, Delegate Merrick North, for bringing this bill forward. This is a great safety bill, truly a safety bill, where it looks like for the members of the legislature. And I'm not going to be repetitive. The delegate did an excellent job explaining the bill, but essentially you have two avenues. You can use up to $1,000 out of your campaign finance account, or you can get $1,000 from the state allocation. And if you go straight to the fiscal note, the language is perfect. Limited to $1,000 per member per term. So you can only use it once over the course of the 4-year cycle, which also leads to the fiscal note where it says revenues are not affected. So it is a de minimis hit if you do take the state allocation route. And, you know, if you do simple math, 188 members, you average it over 4 years, that's a total of $47,000 total, averaged over 4 years for the entire legislature. The cost in other states, there have been higher allocations, but you know, we just wanted to you start off with something lower, and we felt this would be appropriate at $1,000 level. It totally makes sense. We asked for a favorable on the bill. Thank you.
And I'm Mark Feinroth from the law firm of Boston and Plout, also here for ADT, and I'm just here for answering questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Mr. Jacob Parker. Okay, go ahead. All right.
Hi, Chair Wells, members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Jake Parker with the Security Industry Association located in Silver Spring, the leading trade association for security and life safety solution providers. We have 1,600 member companies, but also 50 that are headquartered right here in the state. So we support this legislation because of the risk facing candidates to elected officials today are real, documented, and directly tied to public service. In addition to the incidents that were already mentioned earlier, including the horrific murders last year in Minnesota, I just want to highlight some other things we've seen as well. So in 2023, more than a dozen state legislators across multiple states were targeted in coordinating swatting incidents where false emergency reports were made that sent armed law enforcement to their homes while their families were inside. Lawmakers in several states have received suspicious mail at their residences, triggering hazmat responses. Others have experienced doxing campaigns that publish their home addresses, followed by protesters appearing outside their private homes, often when children were inside. All this underscores a troubling pattern of violence and threats and harassment. These incidents share a common feature, which is the risk extends beyond the office holder to their families and at home, existing because of the individual's public role. So while security costs arise directly from the candidacy or public service, they're not ordinary personal expenses. Without the statutory clarity this bill provides, candidates might either just absorb the cost or forego them altogether, or maybe not update their systems to have some of these more protective features. This definitely creates an inequity that's concerning. Public safety, public service is demanding enough. A candidate's office personal finances should not be a limitation on setting up the appropriate security measures needed to protect their families. So with that, we urge you to support this legislation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions at this time of the committee? Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think you're going to get much pushback or argument on, threats that are out there at times as a delegate or as a elected official. Everybody understands that's, and I understand when we're talking about campaign finance money, you're talking about people that voluntarily gave you money. When we get into the General Assembly reimbursing with taxpayer dollars, people that involuntarily, I think that's a very difficult sell because in my experience down here, if you tell the delegates and the senators, we'll reimburse you $1,000, they're going to spend $1,000. And it's just human nature. I understand the need for it, but I think there's a major difference between, and I'm not saying I'm for the campaign finance money, but I understand that part. Those are people that support you. When we're talking about taxpayer dollars, that's a whole different issue in that we're using taxpayer dollars to provide security for an elected official they may or may not support. And I think it starts to cross a dangerous line of we are more important than the public, and that's not good optics in my opinion. And look, I understand, I would agree with ADT. Most people should have some sort of security system on their home, especially nowadays, but to ask the public to pay for it as if we're at an elevated level or status than the people we represent, and I'm afraid that's the optics that puts off. So it wasn't a question, but unless you've had pushback on that and you want to kind of address it, it's up to you.
Well, I would say, well, let me just begin by saying, I said earlier that this is a response to concerns. I legitimately meant that. When I've been campaigning, it's the first time ever where before I leave the door, people telling me, be careful out there.
I don't doubt you.
So this is really, it's not so much we're requiring ourselves to use our dollars. It's an option that currently it is allowed if we explain it to the State Board of Elections. But by putting it into law, we don't have to go through the explaining process. We know what it's for. But I mean, if anyone else can chime in.
I was just going to say it's not picking winners and losers. It's across the board. All 188 members can use it. It's not a whole lot of money. That's why we kept it low. And, you know, it's because you are, I understand your point. I get it. You know, it's taxpayers' dollars and what makes elected officials better than everyone else. I don't think the point of it is to make elected officials better than everyone else, but because elected officials have chosen to hold office and have to give public opinions, whatever it is, they're more likely, not more likely, there is a chance that they could receive threats, and this is just providing security that's equal across the board. You know, if you're far left, if you're far right, you can get the same $1,000, or you don't have to use it at all.
Right, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would also point out that this is already in law at the federal level. So every member of Congress gets up to $20,000 per month to spend on security because they recognize that there is such a heightened threat to members of Congress. And every candidate at the federal level can use campaign funds to pay for security. So this is carrying over something that already exists at the federal level and bringing it to the state level, albeit at a much lower amount.
Right.
And they just recently increased that at the federal level.
Yeah, those are public funds, $20,000 a month. Those are federal dollars.
A month. $20,000 a month.
Once again, the campaign, my big, I guess, heartburn over it is the taxpayer money being used for it rather than campaign finance money. Look, these are people that support you and they want you to be safe, and I understand that aspect, and that's an argument to have with the State Board of Elections. Matter of fact, I didn't even know, I don't know if you could or couldn't do it anyway. But that's just my point on the bill.
And we put both options in the bill. If the committee feels that they'd rather go one way over the other, we just wanted to put it out there what's going on around the nation and what the options are. So it's the work of the committee.
Yep. Thank you, Delegate.
Sure. Okay. Delegate, are there any other questions for the panel? Not seeing any, then this concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 978. Thank you very much. Of course. You're welcome. The next bill before us is House Bill 1069. Delegate Fair. And we have two persons that will be joining you in favor, Nikki Tyree and Morgan Drayton.
Thank you. Yep. The chairs are really low now that we sit in these very high chairs all of a sudden. All right. Very good. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you so much for hearing this House bill. Between now and the end of June, the Supreme Court is poised to issue a ruling in Watson v. RNC, a case that asks whether federal law preempts state laws and allows mail-in ballots cast and postmarked by Election Day to be counted by election officials after Election Day. It gets to a fundamental question: what is a timely received mail-in ballot under federal law, and does that definition supersede state law? Current law states that mail-in ballots postmarked on or before Election Day can be counted if they are received on or before 10 a.m. on the second Friday after Election Day. However, if the court rules that state laws are preempted, then ballots with votes cast by federal offices likely must be received by Election Day, otherwise the votes for federal offices cannot be counted. If that is indeed the ruling, then there is nothing Maryland can do to count any timely submitted mail-in ballots received after Election Day, but only for federal races. Under the U.S. Constitution, Maryland elections are administered and regulated by Maryland, and it is well within the state's right to determine the procedures for counting the votes for its own offices. Thus, mail-in votes cast for Maryland offices in a timely fashion, but received after Election Day, can still be counted, no matter what the ruling from the Supreme Court says about the votes for federal offices. So my bill before you today proposes a trigger law that would go into effect only once that ruling comes down, allowing the state board to swiftly adopt procedures that will ensure timely cast votes for state races received after Election Day are still counted. This bill gives the board the flexibility to respond to whatever ruling the court issues, guaranteeing responsible administration of elections and maintaining Marylanders' voice in electing their state and local offices. Voting Marylanders who do everything right, requesting and submitting their mail-in ballots on time, should not be disenfranchised at the state level by the Supreme Court's latest interpretation of federal laws. This bill safeguards their right to be heard in state elections, regardless of the court's decision, and I urge a favorable report. I will mention, Madam Chair, at each of your desks is a wonderful single-page graphic that explains how the bifurcation of your federal and state ballot would work under this proposed legislation should the trigger law be enacted. And thank you, Madam Chair. I turn it over to my panel.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Morgan Drayton, Policy Manager with Common Cause Maryland, here in support of HB 1069. As we heard, though we know that the state runs our elections at the federal level, we've already seen sweeping attempts to overhaul the way that our elections are run here in Maryland. And mail-in voting, which is a method used by millions across the country and hundreds of thousands of voters in the state of Maryland, has been specifically targeted. As I said, we know that it's the state that runs our elections here in Maryland. We really just see this bill as a common sense measure to ensure that there will be consistency and clarity around Maryland's policy for accepting those absentee ballots for Maryland offices, just so that information can be clearly communicated to voters in a timely manner. So better to be prepared, and for those reasons, Common Cause Maryland and the League of Women Voters Maryland would request a favorable report on HB 1096. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
At this time, are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Not seeing any. This concludes the bill hearing for 1069. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
Next bill is House Bill 1010. Delegate Fair.
Brought the gang back together. Thank you, Madam Chair. So.
All right, and then let's also bring up Michelle Whitaker
Yep. Thank you.
and Barry Jackson. I think that's, nope, you got plentiful. Ryan Kirby. And that looks like everyone. Correct?
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you to the committee for hearing House Bill 1010, which, as amended, simply gives the State Board of Elections the authority to adopt regulations governing various aspects of ranked choice voting software. Our voting machines can already run ranked choice voting ballots. So what does ranked choice voting software mean? And why is it necessary to adopt regulations about it? After a ranked choice voting contest is held, the only data that comes out from the machines are the raw votes and an accompanying ranking of each candidate. To make sense of these rankings and determine the winner of the contest, those votes must go through a process called tabulation that requires additional software. That's where my bill comes in. SBE would then be charged to create the regulations to review, certify, and implement the necessary software for tabulation, which enables a winner to be declared based on the rankings provided by the voters. Why should we do this now? This bill and resulting regulations will set parameters for procuring the necessary software so the requirements are ready if and when the General Assembly ever authorizes a ranked choice voting contest that is administered by the state. In my view, it is better to set those requirements proactively, separating the conversation about software guidelines from the conversation about whether we should authorize ranked choice voting through the state board. We hear multiple ranked choice voting authorization bills year after year, but they rarely include specifications about tabulation, leaving a gap in our understanding and readiness to implement. If a ranked choice voting contest is authorized and to be administered by the State Board of Elections, we want to make sure that there are no administrative or procurement hurdles that stand in the way of the legislature's intent. We also can't have an honest conversation about ranked choice voting if we don't know whether State Board of Elections has determined that software exists that can meet its standards, especially if those standards don't exist. In the spirit of proactive action about an election topic we frequently find ourselves discussing, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1010. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Michelle Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. We urge a favorable report on HB 1010 to support not only our state, but our local election administrators in being able to run accurate, secure, and transparent elections at all levels. Last week when I was here, I did a demonstration of what ranked choice voting is, and I know some of you recognized I struggled a little bit with separating the blocks. I found out from my friends who are part of the Maryland Lego Association that there are tools that you can use to help you separate blocks. And I was like, that's very helpful information. So I think about that example and I say, we need to make sure that our local election officials have those tools to be able to run their elections well and meet the best practices for all of their residents and their voters. We're not asking you to support ranked choice voting if that's not where you are right now, but to support our election administrators in making sure that they can run elections well at all levels. And you'll hear from some of our state leaders or local leaders who have really been looking at how we can move this forward. Tacoma Park has been using ranked choice voting since 2007, and at the time when they started using it, there was not standardized tools to be able to do it, so they purchased all of their equipment and have been running elections on their own. But we have many other municipalities who use and collaborate with their county boards of elections, and they're interested in ranked choice voting. And one of the questions we receive often is how do we make sure that it's compatible with everything we need to do with the state, and we have all the tools to run the election. This bill helps to make sure that happens, and I would urge a favorable report so we can continue to do that. You see by our letter that we included, we have a number of organizations and individuals who have asked for that support, and I hope you'll consider this and move forward. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Morgan Drayton, Policy Manager with Common Cause Maryland, here in support of HB 1010. And since Michelle did such a great job, I'll try to keep my testimony short. We believe that as more jurisdictions throughout the state explore and adopt ranked choice voting, that our election administrators really need access to reliable tools that have been vetted at the state level. We should continue supporting those election officials who work tirelessly to ensure that every Marylander's vote is counted accurately and fairly each election, and this bill will give them the tools to do so. So for those reasons, we respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had informational testimony.
Okay, I saw that. I realized that I made a mistake.
No worries.
I'm sorry.
If we can turn on the, oh, thank you, perfect.
Okay, so we're good. All right, and now we have our virtual testimony from Harold Ginsburg.
Hi.
Is here as well. Virtual. Madam Chair, I think Barry Jackson is also, somebody you called earlier, he's virtual.
Yes. Okay, so Harold and Barry. All right, just give us a second.
Thank you.
This is Harold Ginsburg. Would you like me to speak, or should I defer to Rockville City Council Member Jackson?
Mr. Ginsburg, we have you signed up, and so I would like for you to testify,
Okay, thank you so much.
as well as Mr. Barry Jackson.
Should I go first?
Yes, we can hear you. We just can't see you at this time, but if you would like to begin your testimony, you can.
All right, thank you so much. I want to thank Delegate Fair for promoting this, for sponsoring this bill, and we do urge a favorable report. My name is Harold Ginsburg, and I am a Kensington, Maryland resident. I'm speaking on my own behalf as well as on behalf of Our Revolution, Montgomery County, and the Green Party of Montgomery County, and we are members of the Ranked Choice Voting Coalition. We think that for the reasons already stated, this legislation makes all the sense in the world. It simplified the process of having ranked choice voting elections, as some jurisdictions, both in Montgomery County and around the state, have indicated. We have seen that such elections can run smoothly and transparently with full understanding by voters. I think this is the best way to move forward to do this. It will save money as well on the local level, and it will avoid any conflicting decisions with respect to approval of equipment. I won't get into why we believe so strongly ranked choice voting is the right decision for many elections, but this legislation will facilitate safe, transparent, and secure elections. We support it and urge a favorable response.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Barry Jackson.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, just can't see you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Wells and members of the committee. I'm Rockville City Council Member Barry Jackson. We are thankful to Delegate Fair for sponsoring this important legislation. The Rockville Mayor and Council support HB 1010, which establishes a framework for evaluating election supporting technology in the state of Maryland. As part of a review of Rockville's election laws and procedures and consideration of changes in best practices, the Mayor and Council expressed support for the exploration of ranked choice voting. During community forums held in the spring of 2025, many voices commented in support of RCV. HB 1010 is critical for jurisdictions considering the implementation of ranked choice voting because the bill defines election supporting technology as equipment that supports this method of voting. If the city were to move forward with ranked choice voting, we would not be able to implement it without access to state infrastructure for election auditing and tabulation. HB 1010 would remove a major barrier by providing local election administrators with access to state-certified, trusted, and vetted technology. The legislation would also reduce unnecessary administrative burdens and costs. HB 1010 takes a significant step towards modernizing elections by making it possible for innovative voting methods such as RCV to be available in Maryland. Additionally, this legislation would equip local election administrators with the tools they need to administer well-run elections while expanding election security and transparency. For these reasons, we urge a favorable report for HB 1010. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Delegate Chisholm, you have a question for our virtual witnesses?
I think I lost it.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
No offense, it's virtual, but in person is a little easier. Just out of curiosity, have they tried ranked choice voting in other states? And if so, has there been any problems? And are there any states that just outright ban it?
So there are 53 jurisdictions that use ranked choice voting across the United States. The state of Maine uses it statewide for statewide elections, along with Alaska. And in New York City, which uses ranked choice voting, particularly related to this bill, the State Board of Elections also did work to review and vet tools that were to assist with tabulation and auditing. And that's been in several other jurisdictions across the United States. On the question of bans, there are states that have done bans in almost every single one of the states that have, which I think there's like a handful of states. It's a preemptive action. The state never had a ability to do ranked choice voting, and for whatever reasons that they've expressed in those states, they've chosen to not even allow that option to move forward. Here in Maryland, our municipalities have the ability to create their own election laws and procedures. And as I mentioned, Tacoma Park has been using this for nearly 2 decades. And there are other jurisdictions that are exploring this across the state. And I'll just note our neighbors in Virginia, similar to us, have local enabling laws. They just recently passed, I think through their House and Senate, similar local enabling bills, as well as they've done work on the certification of tools to support their elections. So this isn't something new that we're introducing. And I'll just point out that the ranked choice voting is something that's not just used in the United States, it's used around the world for elections. This is a common practice to be able to explore how you improve it for either fair representation or to allow for majority winners and eliminate runoffs or other concerns like that in your elections.
Can I ask a follow-up real quick? Since is it enabling legislation, or is it sweeping? It would be approved everywhere, or would it have to every jurisdiction would have to pick it up then. as an
HB 10, for HB 1010.
Yeah.
So the bill itself is just designed to build regulatory framework, not around approval, but rather around the software that's used.
technology.
So it has nothing to do, any county or anybody that operates utilizing state equipment has to come to the state in order to get authorization to do ranked choice voting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for our witnesses? Okay. There being none, this concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 1010.
For no information.
Thank you, everyone.
The next bill before us is House Bill 962. Delegate Warman. And with you, I have Joanne Antone.
So Joanne is out of office today. Is it okay if I testify?
Oh, sure, you're going to replace Joanne? Okay. The next person I have is Michelle Whitaker. Thank you, Delegate. You may begin.
Thank you, delegates. I'm really very excited to see this brand new committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill. It's simple. Oh, for the record, my name is Delegate Teresa Warman, and HB 962 is simple. It allows counties, if they choose, to extend their existing public campaign financing systems to elected members of our county's Board of Education. That's it. It's just enabling, it's voluntary, and it builds on the framework that is already working across Maryland. You guys know this. Right now, counties can create public finances systems for executive and legislative offices. Many already have, including my own county, Montgomery County, where I've seen firsthand how transformative this can be. Before I was sitting here, I managed local campaigns in Montgomery County that use the public financing system, and it really, truly works. We've seen it across the whole state, but in my particular race, we were able to compete and beat a $7 million candidate with a $1 million publicly financed campaign, and that was really awesome. But more importantly, it showed that grassroots candidates can win with the system, and it is structured to amplify the small donors instead of large checks. School board candidates, we know them in our communities. They're often parents, educators, and community members. They're not professional politicians, and they run in nonpartisan elections. They don't have the built-in fundraising networks, and yet those races have become increasingly expensive and high profile. And having come from the local Democratic Party, I know that as of when I was still a part of the central committees, we weren't supporting our school board candidates as much as other races, simply because they're not Democratic races. And this bill keeps all the existing guardrails that have worked for public financing system. Participation is strictly voluntary. Non-participating candidates are not regulated. Funds can only be used for that specific local office. No transfers in and outs, and county CFOs administer the funds. The State Board of Elections retains oversight authority. Nothing about this weakens accountability. And I'll just note that on the fiscal note, I'm not an expert on administrative cost modeling, but I do think the fiscal note is a little bit on the high side. We already have multiple counties operating public finances systems today, and the State Board of Election already oversees those programs. This doesn't create a new structure. It simply allows counties to expand on existing structure to one additional office if they choose. And the real fiscal impact would be at the local level, only if a county decides to adopt this program and appropriate funding for it. Well, this bill is just about giving counties more of that flexibility to design systems that work for their communities. I respectfully ask for a favorable report, and I'll turn it over to my panel. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, for the record, my name is Morgan Drayton, Policy Manager with Common Cause Maryland, here in support of HB 962, which, as we've heard, would just allow campaign finance systems currently functioning in jurisdictions to also cover candidates for local boards of education. We know that these programs have been gaining popularity across Maryland because voters across the political spectrum feel that our campaign finance system is pretty disconnected from the populace, and that LLCs and wealthy donors and super PACs render regular Marylanders' voices pretty meaningless in the current campaign finance environment. And we know that this problem exists at every level of government, from the governor all the way down to our local boards. We know that small donor public funding programs help to uplift the voices of regular Marylanders, empower those candidates who have community-supported ideas, but may not have connections to deep-pocketed interests. This bill would permit jurisdictions to continue expansion of funding programs at their discretion. It's voluntary. We really see this as a step towards amplifying the voices of Maryland voters in every election for every office, and as Delegate Warman said, it just gives the counties more flexibility to do as they please with these programs. So for these reasons, we would request a favorable report. Thank you.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Michelle Whitaker. I am the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. I am speaking as a resident and individual in support of this bill, but I will say that our organization also supports public financing as well. As a resident in Montgomery County, I've seen the benefits of public financing and how it's transformed who runs for office and how residents engage in the political process. The fact that we've left the Board of Education candidates out of that process is a glaring oversight, and I think it's created a situation, especially with how precious and important it is for us to have great leaders in those positions to help with setting the policy for our school boards, that we allow for that to happen. I've worked on campaigns as a campaign manager and helping to develop fundraising campaigns, and it is something that really helps to expand what's possible for a candidate who's coming from the community and really wants to raise the voices of their community, their residents, and help move forward policies that are going to help those constituents. So I urge a favorable report on this bill, and I really hope that we don't continue to exclude our Board of Education candidates who really do need that funds, especially when they're often running at large or have to do district-wide. And for Montgomery County, that is a very large area to cover, and it does cost a lot of money, and they have the least amount of resources, but they're charged with the responsibility of caring for our most precious resources, our children and our students. So I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Seeing no questions from the committee, this concludes the bill hearing on HB 962. Thank you to the delegate and your sponsor panel. Move on next to, do I see Delegate McComas? Okay. We'll put her to the side for now. We'll move to Delegate Terraza, 1289. Yep, Brandon Butler, Andy Ellis, Michelle Whitaker on your sponsor panel, is that correct? 1289. You mean 1020? Okay.
Oh, okay, okay. No, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, thanks. Okay. All right, that was quick. All right, we are on 1289. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, and esteemed members of the LEGO Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Jen Terraza. Thank you for this opportunity to present 1289. The bill establishes a task force on the implementation of approval voting and ranked choice voting to investigate alternative voting methods for state election. And this is cross-filed with Senate Bill 800. Our state current, is it called plurality? Is that the right term? Yeah, the pluralities, that's the system we have right now. System often leads to split outcomes and increased polarity. People get sucked into party politics and winning and stop focusing on the issues. And so you might have the two most popular candidates splitting the vote and then nobody likes winning. So we're looking at creating a task force. We've been hearing from advocates that other methods should be adopted, specifically approval voting and ranked choice voting. And I think you'll hear from somebody also. We're open to an amendment on another type of preference voting. Is that the right term? Yeah, okay, thanks. In fact, some of the local elections in Maryland currently already use this ranked choice voting, and you just heard about that. So here's a quick explanation. Approval voting is a method that has each person vote for as many candidates as they approve of. In other words, voters select on their ballot all the candidates whom they would find acceptable in a given elected position. The candidate that receives the most approvals is the winner. Ranked choice voting is a method where voters rank all candidates in order of preference, and you saw that by Legos, actually demonstrated by one of our witnesses here today. The winner of the vote will be determined based on the candidate who receives over 50% of the vote. In the case that no candidate gets over 50% of the vote, the winners will be determined using an instant runoff. The candidate that received the least amount will be eliminated. You saw all of this, so I'm not going to go through all of that. You've already heard enough about that, and I'm happy to answer questions. So what this bill does is establish a task force that will investigate the two voting methods and potentially a third, for implementation at the state level. The task force will deliver the results of its investigation in December of 2027 and make recommendations for legislative or administrative action. And the following factors will be considered: the use of voting methods, these voting methods in the U.S. and local jurisdictions, potential administrative and fiscal impacts on state and local election boards, potential impacts on voter participation, voter understanding, election outcome and representation, constitutional and legal aspects of implementation, statutory and regulatory changes that would be needed for implementation. And so I think at this point in time, it's best for Maryland to investigate these different strategies. With current political polarization dividing the country, it's more important than ever that Marylanders trust the voting system and have confidence that their choice is reflected in their vote. The task force established here is a step towards that, increasing Marylanders' faith in their government and fortifying our democratic process. I respectfully urge a favorable report.
Chair Wells and members of the committee, my name is Michelle Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. I want to thank the delegate for bringing this bill forward to study, have a task force to look into ranked choice voting and approval voting and how to implement them. We are submitting testimony in favor of this with amendments. We have 3 amendments that we included in terms of helping to improve and refine the scope of the work. The first one is that in terms of the task force members, we would like there to be 2 representatives from a state or national group that has expertise in ranked choice voting, and 2 representatives from a state or national organization with expertise in approval voting. Along with 1 representative from the Maryland Association of Election Officials, MAO. We wanted to just clarify to make sure that those were identified clearly as the members of these committees who have the election expertise in those areas. Secondly, in terms of the scope of the task force, we would like to add language that focuses the task force on implementation of approval voting or ranked choice voting for state-level elections, which would be General Assembly and statewide offices only, and to examine the use of approval voting and ranked choice voting to achieve proportional representation with multi-member districts. Those are 2 amendments to the scope to help evaluate at the state level. And the third is to modify the effective date to be December 1st, 2026, so that legislation, if there's recommendations that come from the task force, they can be presented and at the next session in 2027 and for the General Assembly to move forward. So those are our recommendations with the amendments to support this task force and give all of you guidance on how to move forward with this. And I'd just like to end that this should not impact any other bills related to ranked choice voting, as this is a task force focused on the state level. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee, the chair, and the vice chair. My name is Andy Ellis, and I'm running for governor of Maryland as a Green Party candidate. I'll start with the confession. I actually like bills that study things. I know that may make me unusual among people who are currently running for governor, but I believe that when the body takes on a hard problem facing the state of Maryland, having smart people who are experts in a field examine implementation solutions is a good path. I think Montgomery County has done plenty of study on their bill, and I support bills to allow them to move forward. But today, I'm here to support HB 1289, and I'm offering one small amendment. Add proportional representation to the scope of this study. My written testimony makes the full case and explains the Green Party position on ranked choice voting and approval voting and proportional representation. I hope members of the committee will take a moment to look at it. But today I want to explain briefly what proportional representation does to belong in the study. First, proportional representation is an electoral reform that awards seats based on the proportion of support a candidate or a party gets. In our current multi-member districts, we use block voting, which is perhaps the worst form of representation possible. In a proportional system, like single transferable vote, each voter would get one vote and the 3 seats would be allocated based on the proportion of votes the candidates received. That's better for representation. Second, the filing deadline yesterday proves a good example of a problem that the proportional representation can help to address. Races with no two-party competition in the general election are rampant in the General Assembly. Yesterday's numbers are this year's version of their problem. They're nothing new, and they are what RCV or approval voting cannot solve alone. Proportional representation, especially when in combination with ranked choice voting or approval voting, is good at solving this particular problem, and it should be part of any study we do about voting or electoral methods. I urge a favorable report with the recommended amendments.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I was doing the do not press.
It's not on.
There we go. There we go. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Brandon Butler, Pinnacle Strategies, on behalf of our client, the Center for Election Science. Here in support of the bill, we do not have any amendments. The bill is very simple, and it's something that Maryland continues to be proud of, putting the best and the brightest in the room and talking things out. And so when the Center for Election Science is very interested and very invested in innovation when it comes to voting methods. And so when other states are closing their doors and foreclosing the idea to innovation when it comes to elections, Maryland continues to have a number of bills before the legislature in support of various election alternatives. So with that, we agree that putting the best, the brightest in the room is a good thing. And so for that, we are asking for a favorable consideration of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no questions from the committee, this concludes the bill hearing on HB 1289. We'll move on next to Delegate Terrazas' second bill.
Madam Chair, would it be possible to take Delegate McComas's bill? My key witness is from National Federation for the Blind, is not here yet. We're trying to track her down.
Yep. We'll move on to go back to Delegate McComas's bill, HB 1265.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate being allowed to testify for this bill in the new committee. There's some familiar faces here. Testimony in support of HB 1265, Oath of Truthfulness with Amendment. Your packet should have the amendment as well as the reprint. Maryland House Bill 1265 with amendment makes it optional for political candidates to sign an oath of truthfulness regarding their campaign information. Candidates would swear that their campaign materials are truthful to the best of their knowledge. Upon doing so, HB 1265 with amendment permits a candidate to state their campaign materials that they have signed would be known as Fair Campaign Practices Pledge. Candidates in 8 states have the option of signing a Fair Campaign Practices Pledge: California, Illinois, Maine, Montana, Nevada, Texas, Utah, and West Virginia. Arkansas is the only state where signing a Fair Campaign Practices pledge is mandatory. The pledge applies to information regarding past and present employment, criminal and civil legal history, and professional and organizational affiliations. It further provides that knowingly providing deliberate false information could lead to charges of lying under oath, disqualification of candidacy, or removal from office. There are exceptions, however. To protect freedom of speech. The bill specifically does not prohibit candidates from embellishing or editorializing non-factual opinions or personal information during normal campaigning. Given the bad acts of former Congressman Santos, it has never been clearer that Maryland needs to go one step further toward transparency in campaigning. On a more humorous note, and in preparation for the testimony supporting HB 1265, the oaths of office of all states were scanned in hopes of garnering more information and background on pre-election oaths of truthfulness. One standout oath amongst all those perused hails from Kentucky. It reads in pertinent part as follows. I do solemnly swear or affirm that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted in any person thus offending. Kentucky's current Constitution remains in force in 1891. Let's move forward in good faith campaigning and transparency in the 21st century. Please return a favorable report for HB 1265 with amendment. The other thing I would just say is that besides the reprint and the amendment, I also have my dear aide gave fair campaign practices. It's a takeaway that hopefully you have on your laptops, oath of each state, and then lies, damn lies, and George Santos articles. And I know you're probably busy like judiciary is and don't have time for anything, but you know, you might enjoy at least perusing about damn lies, and George Santos, because he kind of really made the mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Delegate Siliberti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate, are you implying that some candidates are untruthful? I'm shocked.
No, I'm just saying that we kind of clean up our act a little bit, and we do things a little more professionally, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, we don't have anybody that's close to George Santos.
All right.
Just having a little bit better practice.
Thank you very much. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so I just have three statements, and I want you to tell me if they would be swept up as problematic under this bill. Number one of our committee colleagues, I don't want to use his name, but I'll give you a hint. He was born prior to 1950.
Oh, I think I know who that might be.
He once told me that he was the most handsome person ever elected to the General Assembly. Would that be problematic under this bill?
No, because okay. I think the public would believe that because quite actually he and I shared an office suite for 4 years.
You're a lucky woman.
We had 4 wonderful windows on the 3rd floor, and I'm still mad at Jeremy Baker.
I've been asking the Speaker's staff for years if I could share an office with that gentleman, and it have not had any luck. So somewhat more seriously, I believe that President Biden actually once said that he was arrested in South Africa going to try to see Nelson Mandela, which did not happen. Would he be in trouble under this bill?
Biden is a resident of Delaware, and he's a president, and actually I'm not sure he would be running now because he's a bit old.
Okay, well that's all true. But if he were, let's say a Maryland legislator made that same statement, that they got arrested in South Africa going to see Nelson Mandela, and that didn't actually happen, would that be a deliberately false statement?
It depends on if somebody wants to make that allegation. This is your bill now. I've tossed the football here.
Last one. I told you there would be 3. Last one.
Yeah.
Let's say someone said, any Maryland legislator said, I won the 2020 election, and they didn't win the 2020 election. Would that be a deliberately false statement?
You all, the bill is
Okay, all right,
in
thank
your
you. Thank you.
hands,
Thank
and
you for having fun with me today.
I'm
I
not going to
appreciate it.
try to
You've been very-
outguess you.
Thank you. You've been very patient with
you
me.
very much,
And maybe
Delegate.
one day, maybe one day this session, I will be able to fulfill my dream of being in an office with Delegate Silver.
All right. Seeing no more questions from the committee.
I knew I was going to get skewered one way or the other.
This concludes our bill
I
hearing
know
on
my former chairman,
HB
Clippinger,
1265.
could have gone after me, so, and then I could have
You're
the Freedom
excused, Delegate.
Caucus
Thank
go
you very
after
much.
me, so this,
All right, that concludes our bill hearing on HB 1265. We'll move next to Delegate Terraza for HB 1027.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, unfortunately, my witness is in the Senate testifying on the same bill, I believe. And what I'd say is perhaps you guys will open your offices and speak with Ronza from the National Federation for the Blind, who had requested this bill and unfortunately probably won't make it over here on time. So good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and fellow members of GLEE. I called it that this time. For the record, I'm Delegate Jen Terrassa, and I thank you for this opportunity to present HB 1027, which would require the State Board of Elections to establish an accessible telephone voting process for voters with disabilities. And this is cross-filed with Senate Bill 901, where our witness is. The current mail-in, here's the problem. The current mail-in voting process in Maryland is paper-based and does not allow for blind voters and those with other print disabilities to vote privately and independently. The process can feel discriminatory and has an impact of disenfranchising voters. Maryland's mail-in voting system enables voters to request a ballot be sent to them electronically, which they can then use to vote. However, the voter still must print, sign, and return the ballot via mail or drop box. And so for blind and low vision voters and those with print disabilities, they must get assistance printing, signing, certifying, mailing, and dropping off their ballots. As a result, the voter's privacy and independence are compromised. Those assisting can see the voter's choice and can even alter the voter's selections without their knowledge. This can be a big issue for voters who don't have someone trusted available to assist them. Others don't want their family members or friends to know how they're voting, and some voters have shared the person assisting them has tried to persuade them to vote or a certain way or change their vote after seeing who they've selected. These instances demonstrate how current voting methods can violate the autonomy of voters with disabilities and even undermine the democratic process. So what this bill does, it creates a secure method to guarantee blind and otherwise print disabled voters the ability to vote privately and independently, and a ballot return, and doing a ballot return that would not involve the internet. The method proposed in this legislation would rely on an automatic phone system to capture the voter's choice. So here's how it would work. A blind or otherwise print-disabled person would request a voter absentee using a telephone system in the same way that voters request the use of electronic delivered ballot now. In that request, they would clarify they are a person who is blind or otherwise print disabled, and the Board of Elections would, after verifying their eligibility to vote, send the voter credentials to access a phone voting system. The Board of Elections would enable the credentials or would ensure that the credentials are associated with a specific ballot assigned to that voter. And the voter would call a toll-free number established by the Board of Elections operating an automated system and enter their credentials using a touch-tone phone. And basically, they would be read the choices by this automatic system and be able to use a touch-tone phone to vote. And then it would read it back to them to make sure that it's what they intended it to be. Once the voter submits the ballot through the automatic phone system, the ballot is stored in a secured system that's not connected to the internet, and the Board of Elections would print the ballot, so there was copies of just a paper record like they have of everything else. This method is modeled after a system used in both Australia and New Zealand for voters who are blind, but is adapted to account for Maryland elections. House Bill 1027 would establish a secure method of voting that maintains the integrity of elections. 1027 is a reasonable accommodation for a subset of absentee voters who currently are unable to vote in a way that protects privacy of their votes. It's an automated telephonic voting method that issues credentials. All other aspects of the method of voting are the same as how Maryland currently processes absentee ballots. And this would give them an opportunity to vote privately, as I said. Note there are a number of sponsor amendments offered that will tighten up some of the language in this bill. And voting is, as we know, a fundamental right, and equal access to voting method is really essential to democracy. I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1027.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Delegate Fisher.
I was looking at the bill, and one of the line items is credentials to authenticate the voter's identity. How would you do that?
That's a good question. I don't know, but that would be within the, I don't know how we validate that now. So I know that it's done, and I know that that would be within the Board of Elections' discretion. So I talked to Jared Demarinis about that.
Jared's not here, though, but I was just, which is...
I'm happy to get you whatever. I mean, we validate that all the time for for absentee ballots. Whether you like that or not, it is done. And
so it says in the bill, accessible format means Braille, large print, audio, or digital text that is used by the blind or visually impaired individuals or individuals with a print disability. And so that takes me down to the credential part. Just trying to figure out how that would happen. Credentials to authenticate the voter's identity. Seems like it would be easier for the Board of Elections to just drive the individual to have volunteers drive the individuals and show an ID to verify their identity.
I don't believe in him having to show ID, but if you do, you can put that bill in.
But you do believe, per your bill, that they need to have credentials to authenticate their identity.
Right, so
I'm trying to figure out.
No, I understand.
But I'm just trying to figure out how there's a distinction here, because how do you determine what your identity is without an ID?
It's the same, yeah, whether you like them or not, it's the same as it's done with absentee ballots all the time.
Whether I like them or not, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just asking the question, because it seems like a fair question given.
It's a fair question.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill. Do we have any idea how many people this would encompass?
I don't, but I think my witness probably does. But I could find that answer for you.
No, it's fine. I understand your witnesses in the Senate. I'd be very curious. I did talk to the Federation of Blind when they came in my office, and I understand the problem, but I think the Delegate Fisher's line of questioning too is we want to make sure that their votes are being protected, because obviously there's parts of this bill that they feel like maybe they've been coerced or whatever the case may be. We want to make sure if it's a vote, it's their legitimate vote and it's their legitimate choice rather than being taken care of, or taken advantage of. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to clarify, this would be an all-new way for individuals to vote that doesn't exist currently. Is that correct? Because they would be
It'd be an all-new access to that vote,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so we're talking about not following the standard mail-in ballot processes that have all kinds of securities in place for them already, all of the existing securities that exist when we go to vote in person, including when we go list our name, our address, et cetera, in order just to get a ballot in order to vote. And so we're talking about the person who is not looking at another individual and attesting to anything. So we need to have some kind of verification over the telephone that the person that we're talking to is indeed the person that we're intended to be talking to make that vote. And so that's when we talk about these kinds of things that would be along those lines. I did just, for the sake of Googling it, check, and so it appears it's somewhere over 100,000 people that are blind or visually impaired in the state of Maryland. So I don't know if that sounds...
So a significant number of people who would be enfranchised by this.
Well, and that kind of does lead to the question, which is at what levels do you have to show your visual impairness in order to have this applicable to you?
Yeah, you know, I have to take a look back at it. I was hoping Ronza would be able to speak to that, but I believe, I don't believe it's a doctor. I have to go back and look at it, the exact language, but my understanding is that you would certify yourself. But I'll look at that, and it's certainly something we can work on together.
No, that sounds great. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for bringing the bill, Delegate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, delegates. I'll read the individuals that were listed as favorable, just to see if they're Yasmin, Ronza, I think you mentioned. I have Braden Stenar. All those were their sponsor panelists, and they're not in the room. We have one additional in person, Cheryl Fogel-Hatch. Not sure if they are here. Okay, all right.
They may all be on the Senate side.
We understand. Well, hopefully, if they're included in the packet, or they can submit their testimony.
Okay,
or
thank you. I appreciate
reach out
that.
to us. Thank you very much. We will move on next, delegate, to the unfavorable, and I have in person Nikki Tyree. We have virtual and possibly in person Susan Green Hogg, and then we have Liz Iko Busi virtual.
Hi, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, members of the committee. I start off by apologizing if I was not here when called up.
We have virtual and possibly in person Susan Green Hogg, and then we have Liz Iko Busi virtual.
Thank you. So apologies for not being here when called up earlier, but we're straddling both chambers today. So for the record, I'm Nikki Tyree, Executive Director for the League of Women Voters of Maryland. When it comes to elections, the League follows the SARET model: secure, accurate, recountable, accessible, and transparent. While we applaud any effort to make elections more accessible, the League is concerned about the lack of security being put forth in this bill. Voting by phone has been shown to lack security, as you must connect at some point to the internet or public network. The bill, as written, does not define how these votes would be kept secret, how they can be audited or recounted if necessary. And a system like this has never been tested on a Maryland ballot. There have been smaller programs, but when looking at the details, it becomes apparent that this Maryland ballot would far outweigh what those programs set out to achieve. For example, the Australia and New Zealand that you will hear a lot about, that was a yes/no question. It was not a ballot in its entirety. Some of the other programs that were run in West Virginia and Denver were done on a much smaller scale. We're talking about less than 200 people to some extent. The League joins the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Department of Homeland Security, FEC, FBI, and numerous other nonpartisan election organizations to ask for an unfavorable report on this bill. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Seeing none from the committee, we'll move to our virtual. We'll begin with Liz. If you could please pronounce your name for us, Liz. I fear I butchered it.
No worries. Everyone does. Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Liz Iacobucci, and I'm with Public Citizen, a nonpartisan nonprofit with more than 40,000 supporters in Maryland. I'm grateful that this committee is working to improve access for voters with disabilities. More than half the states in our country authorize curbside voting, and I'm delighted to see that Maryland may join that list through HB 641. I also want to draw your attention to a 113-page report by the National Institute of Standards and Technology on improving access for voters with disabilities. Curbside voting is one of the recommendations that report includes, but the report does not include implementing online ballot return at this time. This bill discusses a telephone voting system, which will be a form of electronic ballot return. Modern phones use the internet in one way or another. I can refer you to several computer scientists who will verify this point. All of the security concerns about electronic ballot return, internet voting, also applies to any system that uses telephones for voting. The bill tries to address security vulnerabilities in ballot storage. That does not address the security risks inherent in transmission, returning the voting ballots over the internet. The bill also appears to be prescriptive. It requires the state board to acquire a telephone voting system. I see a lot of shalls in the bill rather than mays. It doesn't explain what the state board is supposed to do if they can't find a system that satisfies the bill's security requirements. And as far as I know, there are no such systems that would satisfy those standards. Third, as I will testify later, any type of online voting system is vulnerable to crashing, which disenfranchises voters, can require elections to be completely rerun, including in Australia. Again, I appreciate the motivation behind this bill. I urge you to consider the different recommendations to improve access made in the NIST report, but I also encourage you to either significantly rework this bill or vote unfavorable on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yakabuchi. We'll move next to Susan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify on HB 1027. I am the Senior Advisor on Election Security for Free Speech for People. We are a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization committed to defending democracy and the Constitution, and we focus on advocacy and legal actions to protect and expand access to voting and access for all. So we are very much in favor of the intent of 1027. But because of the security issues that my colleague at Public Citizen has already highlighted, we unfortunately have to recommend an unfavorable report. The pursuit of a telephone voting system is done under the assumption that it can be done without transmitting votes over the internet. That's just not the case. We have consulted with a number of leading computer scientists that have studied electronic ballot casting, and they have all confirmed that today's telephone systems use the internet. Furthermore, as it's drafted, this bill could be interpreted to permit a mobile voting application, and which includes all of the other security concerns and documented problems with mobile voting. The provision to require ballots to be stored in an air-gapped, non-internet connected system only specifies the storage system and not the transmission of the actual ballots, notably omitting that part of the process because of the inherent necessity to rely on the internet for any telephone voting system. These issues have been studied exhaustively by so many different entities, including NIST, the National Academies of Science, private entities as well, and including the Maryland Legislative Services, which has done this study. And they also concluded that Maryland would be unlikely to face any legal challenges for its current accessibility systems. So we recommend an unfavorable report and welcome the committee's questions and any opportunities to explore other accessible voting solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Susan, could you please say your full name for the record?
Absolutely. Susan Greenhall.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Like with the GH is silent.
Thank you very much, Ms. Greenhall.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, seeing no questions from the committee, thank you both for your testimony. This concludes our bill hearing for HB 1027. We'll move next to Delegate Lehman, HB 1066, and her staff is here to present. I see that you have a sponsor panel, Ms. Michelle Feldman, Boris Senti, Ronza Othman, who I believe is in the Senate, are testifying on another bill.
Hello. I think the witnesses from the Senate have just arrived. Hello, for the record, my name is Austin Painter on behalf of Delegate Lehman, and I'm here to request a favorable report on House Bill 1066. This bill aims to enhance and increase accessibility and increase voter turnout by permitting municipalities and to use mobile voting systems within city elections. Again, it is just meant to be used by municipalities within city elections. It authorizes municipal governments to conduct elections using a qualified electronic transmission system. This bill ensures municipalities participating in mobile voting systems may only use voter data they collect for election administration and voter participation statistics, safeguarding voter privacy. A qualified transmission voting system is defined as an electronic system that allows qualified voters to receive, complete, and submit their ballots, all while ensuring robust data security measures. This system will include the following security features to protect voter integrity, which the witnesses and I would be happy to explain in further detail. These include security auditability, end-to-end encryption, end-to-end verifiability, multi-factor authentication, air gapping, a process for printing decrypted ballots, and biometric or equivalent digital identity verification. There have been several jurisdictions that have had successful pilot programs. Results from these initiatives indicate that mobile voting not only increases accessibility, but also significantly boosts voter turnout and while reducing election costs. In 2019, a pilot program in Denver resulted in a doubling of voter turnout, and 4 voters covered under the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act. Although this initiative was conducted on a smaller scale, it enabled residents and military personnel to fulfill their civic duty. A 2020 local election in Seattle utilized a mobile voting system that nearly doubled turnout. Measures that encourage voter accessibility play a critical role in increasing turnout. When barriers to voting are reduced, participation in elections tends to rise significantly. Several voter impacts studies show that when voters can easily access the ballot, they are more likely to engage in the democratic process. This reflects a healthier democracy and ensures that a wider range of voices and perspectives are represented. Supporting this bill will ultimately contribute to a more inclusive electoral system, ultimately benefiting society. It is important to note that HB 1066 would not replace any existing voting methods, but would just serve as an additional option. Municipalities will retain the flexibility to determine their own digital identity verification requirements to be consistent with their existing voting procedures and allow them to meet the bill's security standards using methods that work within their legal, technical, and budgetary constraints. In closing, I urge you to consider the potential of HB 1066 to empower voters, enhance participation, and maintain the integrity of our elections. By supporting this bill, we can pave the way for a more inclusive and accessible voting experience for all citizens. Thank you for your consideration, and I request a favorable report.
Thank you very much. I believe the rest of your panel has arrived as well. Ms. Ronza Othman, Michelle Feldman, and Forrest Sinti. I don't know if I'm missing anyone else that's supposed to be on the panel.
Janice Samuel, I think she's still in the Senate.
Okay, all right.
Good afternoon. Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Feldman. I am the campaign director for the Mobile Voting Project. We're a nonprofit that works to improve voter access and turnout through secure voting via smartphone. It's no secret that today we have new and evolving barriers to voting, but the good thing is there's innovation and we could responsibly address some of these roadblocks. You heard from our sponsor testimony, there are pilot programs that have been conducted in 11 different states, both red and blue. There are 32 states that allow for some electronic ballot return for military, overseas, and sometimes disabled voters. Maryland is not one of those states, and we've seen really great results in the pilot programs that we've used, both increasing turnout and decreasing administrative hours spent on elections. So I'll talk really quickly about how it all works. First, the voter downloads a secure app through their Board of Elections website. Then they verify their identity through multi-factor authentication. Third, they mark their device, and once they hit submit, 3 things happen. The ballot is encrypted, it's anonymized, voter receives a tracking code. Fourth, the digital ballot goes to election officials who immediately take it offline, print it out, and mix it in with all the other ballots. Finally, using their tracking code, the voter can verify that their ballot was cast and recorded correctly. This bill is an opt-in bill. Municipalities can do this if they want. They don't have to do it if they want. It's just another way, another tool to have in their toolbox to help people with barriers to voting, young people, people in the military, people with disabilities, and the list goes on, participate in our municipal system. And just lastly, you'll hear from our opponents that mobile voting can never be secure. That's simply untrue. Technology evolves. We are at a place now that we can do this securely, and the price of not doing it is just too great.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you so much. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Forrest Sinti, and I am testifying in support of this bill. I've spent a lot of my career working in cybersecurity and secure software design in both the public and private sectors. At the National Cybersecurity, I was also a hands-on practitioner and the program executive there, and I got to lead the first independent security audits of mobile voting technology, and I've worked in several states on the first uses of this technology. I'm here as a cybersecurity consultant to address the security of what this bill contemplates, and you can throw things at me because I'm the designated nerd for you today. You will likely hear that internet voting is insecure. For email, fax, and unsecured web ballot portable turn, I agree. I would actually oppose their use. But in this bill, it requires something fundamentally different. End-to-end verifiable cryptography, the same mathematics protecting banking, military communications, and classified systems. Here's the critical distinction. Traditional electronic systems ask you to trust that nothing went wrong. This system asks you to verify. Every ballot is encrypted on the voter's device and mathematically provable from submission to final count. If anything is tampered with, malware, an insider threat, anyone, the math breaks and the discrepancy is detected. This system is designed to fail loudly, not silently. You are going to hear 3 specific objections. First, that malware could compromise the voter's phone, but verification happens on a separate device, requiring an attacker to compromise both independently. Second, most voters don't actually check their ballots even when capable of it. But even a small percentage of people checking their ballot creates a statistical tripwire that makes large-scale, undetected fraud mathematically improbable. And third, there's no dispute resolution. This bill would actually require a paper record still. Decrypted ballots that are printed offline and enter the same audit and recount processes as every other paper ballot. A lot has changed since the Federal CISA agency and the FBI warned us that electronic ballot return is high risk. That assessment evaluated email, fax, and unsecured web portals. The next generation of mobile voting technology is here, more secure, it's encrypted, independently verifiable, and auditable. I welcome your skepticism, and I would love your questions when we're all done. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We apologize for being late. We had worked out timing of the cross files with the committee managers and thought we had more time, but they were heard exactly at the same time. My name is Ronza Othman, and I am the president of the National Federation of the Blind of Maryland. NFB of Maryland is the state's oldest and largest organization of and for blind, low vision, and deaf-blind individuals. There are currently 250,000 Marylanders with disabilities, many of whom cannot vote privately or independently. Municipal elections, unlike federal and state elections, do not have the same accessibility guardrails that federal and state elections do. For example, some municipalities who offer absentee-only paper ballot delivery and ballot return, which shuts out blind, low vision, and otherwise print-disabled voters from participating in this method. Some jurisdictions do not provide accessible in-person options. They use their own equipment rather than SBEs, which do not have features that exist or sometimes good features of accessibility. Voting locations may not be accessible to public transportation. Mobile voting would enable voters with disabilities to participate in the voting process. Those who have security concerns would Those who cite security concerns have yet to offer an alternative which would be accessible and satisfy their concerns. This in spite of rigorous security testing in the use of this technology in hundreds of jurisdictions all over the world who have had no security incidents. We have to allow people who want to vote the ability to vote, and we have to make sure accessibility is part of this, is part of the process. And then we have a duty to allow municipalities that wish to use this method to do so rather than standing in the way of them meeting their legal obligations to their constituents. I therefore urge a favorable report on HB 1066, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this, or if it's allowed, HB 1027.
Thank you. We have a question from Delegate Sample Hughes.
Chair, and thank you for being here today and providing this testimony on the bill. I had one question before I move to, as you said, the designated nerd for the day. But let me ask this. It was noted about the processes, like steps 1, 2, 3, 4 through 5. Can you tell me what number 2 was? I missed that one.
Sure. It's verification. So it's you are who you say you are, basically ensuring that. It could be done in all kinds of ways depending on the laws of each jurisdiction. So it could be an email that you get that has a code that, like you would if you lost your Gmail password. You could even do biometric screening. It's all going to depend on the jurisdiction and what their laws are.
Okay, thank you. And then the second part to my question, now and I know this is all decided upon if the municipality chooses to do this, but the second question was about the tabulation machines that are used to send out the unofficial results at night after the election has taken place. Do they have another like modem or upgrade or something that they would need to do in order for this to seamlessly take place the night of the election?
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. And I got to say, I love seeing all the pink and green today.
Yes.
To answer your question, I promise you're not buttering you up. On the tabulation side, a lot of how the design of how this is worked out is designed to work with the existing flow. So when the ballots are decrypted, they're printed offline and they're merged in with the existing process. So if they're using an existing tabulator, once that kind of the typical process for online would play out, those would go in and they would go through your normal tabulator process, and then that way you get that raw count would exist the same way. The design of the system is designed to mimic and emulate the existing system, but just in a digital form and where the processes can overlap and not be changed. Because by design, we don't want to create more work for people to be able to implement one of these systems. The whole design is we want to save time, we want to save money, we want to make it more transparent. And there's a lot of things on that piece. So that's how I would answer your question, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. We have been, attempting and doing our very best on making sure everywhere is equipped with the broadband and as much current equipment as possible. But I was just wanting to understand whether or not this would be a hindrance for those who maybe even want to consider doing it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Delegate Schindler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for the panel. I appreciate the intent of this, but you keep hearing references to the system. Is this just a particular vendor that does electronic voting that you're referring to, or are there, I would assume that there are probably multiple vendors out there that are, approaching this emerging technology and dealing with this. So I can't imagine that it's one size fits all. They probably handle it all differently. I was kind of curious about the verbiage you've been using about the system. I imagine each one is different. So I was curious if you could comment to that.
Sure. Thank you, Delegate. So I will answer that in two parts. So when I'm referring to the system, what I'm speaking of is when we're looking at this kind of codifying in law and the different standards we put out here, things like end-to-end verifiability, biometrics, those kind of things, we are describing standards, basically objectable, auditable standards that are written into the statute. So that somebody could, if there was a vendor or even a city, the state, anybody could build something to these standards and go meet that. So the idea is that, let's say there are existing vendors, and there are existing vendors, like Democracy Live is a good example. I've worked with them in the past. They would have to meet that standard and prove it, whether it's a state IT office, a qualified security firm, an academic institution. Like they would have to go and prove that they can meet that standard that's outlined in there to be able to do that. When I am talking in terms like a system, we aren't a vendor necessarily. We're a nonprofit, we're an advocacy group. But what we've done is we've built a protocol that's similar to TLS, which is that little kind of lock set system that's lock symbol that's in your browser, which took a decade of engineers to build to be able to create like secure internet traffic essentially. We built something like that for online voting, specific so that you could actually enable some of these technologies and have mathematical proof to back it up. So when I'm referring to system, I'm talking about people that would then implement the use of that protocol because it's an open source, it's a peer-reviewed thing, it's a growing trend. So that's why I would answer it in two ways, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask one more follow-up?
Yes.
So as a follow-up to that, and I'm a cybersecurity professional, so I appreciate the explanation. Yeah, it's very apt. But question I would have is, you have other states that are utilizing this now, according to the testimony and everything. Do any of them get a little more granular? The standards to me, at least, are a little vague and would worry me a bit as it comes to encryption or, as you know, all multi-factor authentication is not the same. So, something like an email, right, is not as secure as something like biometric. So do you see other states that get a little bit more specific about the security standards for something like this?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm happy to send you a list of that or give that to you away. I'm most familiar with Colorado, so that's a place where if I were to do a big breakdown and kind of share that with you, I could do that. But the whole design there, like in Colorado, for example, is that they're actually, like the Secretary of State's office actually reviews it and goes through a whole vendor review with them. So, and they make them verify. There's a big thing with compliance and that kind of piece. So models like that have worked across the country, and even in other countries, they do a similar thing. But I'd be happy to share that information with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Delegate Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the bill, does it apply to all voters or just voters that are visually impaired?
It would apply to all voters in municipalities, sir.
Okay. So it's really not just about one subgroup that requires additional assistance. It's really about all voters. I think that's kind of an important thing here. So my other question is, and I understand that you're a cybersecurity guy, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the advent of AI and knowing the people that I know in the industry, are you comfortable in telling me that AI can't hack this and can't break in and change things? Because there was just a hacker that used Anthropic, this is today's news, and hacked not only government agencies in Mexico, but also a trove of tax and voter information.
Sure.
And these were AI agents, I believe, that did that?
Yeah, that was a good one. So Delegate, to directly answer your question, no. 100% certainty is never possible.
Okay.
And when I say that respectfully, systems that are built well are designed with the assumption that an attack will happen.
Okay.
So when we design these things, when we build these things, the average person is receiving 6,000 attacks a day.
Mm-hmm.
And when I throw out that number, when people hear that, they go, huh? Well, it's because it's all happening in the background, the systems and processes and tools and techniques that are built by amazing professionals like those in the state of Maryland are defending those things in real time. So that's, and if anybody ever tells you it's 100% secure, then they're lying. So that's why I can't say without a doubt that it would be possible. So,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Additional questions for the sponsor panel? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. There is another in-person favorable panel. I will call up Janice Samuel and Michelle Whitaker.
Janice, do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 seconds. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Janice Samuel, and I am a resident of Bowie, Maryland. I'm here today to urge a favorable report on House Bill 1066. As a person who is legally blind with severely myopic 20/400 vision, the fundamental right to a private and independent ballot is often a challenge. Currently, in many municipal elections, my options are limited. I must either rely on a sighted person to mark my ballot, forfeiting my privacy, or navigate physical polling places that may lack the specialized equipment I need, or polling personnel are not properly trained. HB 1066 changes that by authorizing municipalities to use qualified electronic transmission systems. For the blind community, this is not just a matter of convenience, it is a matter of civil rights. Let's talk about independence. This technology allows me to use my own assistive software at home to receive, mark, and return my ballot securely and privately. Security. This bill specifically requires end-to-end encryption and multi-factor authentication, ensuring my vote is as secure as it is accessible. Equity. Bowie residents with disabilities deserve the same seamless voting experiences as our sighted neighbors. Voting is the most direct way we participate in our democracy. By passing HB 1066, you ensure that a secret ballot applies to all Marylanders, regardless of how they see the ballot. I respectfully ask for a favorable committee report. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Michelle Whitaker. I'm the Executive Director for Ranked Choice Voting Maryland. Ranked Choice Voting Maryland is dedicated to promoting transparent, secure, and accurate elections at all levels, and we support HB 1066, not only to help with our residents, as many have mentioned, to allow for them to have a private ballot, but also to address issues related to participation and access in our elections, especially at the municipal level. Many of our municipal elections have very low turnout, and this ability to have an electronic transmission may open up the possibilities for more individuals to participate securely in the election in a way that helps them to be a member of that community and raise their voice. We recognize, as has been shared today, some of the concerns around security, and that is one reason why the American Bar Association, which supports the introduction of mobile or online voting, really recommends finding a pilot program at a local level to be able to make sure you test and verify how you make it secure and accurate for all residents and maintain our voter integrity and protocols. So we recommend that the option that is presented in this bill to use this technology at municipal levels presents an opportunity for innovation at the local level, to test this out and to see how we can make it work. And we are welcome and open to any suggestions that this committee have or others to make sure that we are allowing for it to remain secure and accurate, but most importantly, accessible for all of our residents, and to look at ways we can increase participation in our municipal elections, which often have very low turnout in the 10s and mid-20s in terms of who's participating in those elections. So thank you very much.
Are there questions for this favorable panel? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We will now bring up a favorable virtual panel, and I will call Sam Kinch, Brenda Gurdon-Mitchell, and Jocelyn Bucaro. Jocelyn Bucaro, please go ahead. You have 2 minutes for your testimony.
I will go first. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jocelyn Bucaro on behalf of the Mobile Voting Project. I am a former election administrator who spent a decade overseeing elections as director of elections.
Jocelyn Bucaro, please go ahead. You have 2 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. You can hear me. I will go first. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jocelyn Bucaro on behalf of the... I am a former
If you are streaming, if you're streaming it on another device, we can hear the other device. If you're not on mute, please mute your computer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Can you all hear me okay? I'm so sorry.
Yes, we can hear you. We apologize to Ms. Bucaro. There's a little bit of a technical, feedback.
I got it. My apologies for that.
No
that
worries.
was my bad.
All good. We'll start you over at 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm a former election administrator. I spent a decade overseeing elections as director of elections in Denver and in Ohio. And mobile voting is not new, as you've heard. 32 states currently allow for some form of internet ballot return for at least military voters. Mobile voting itself has been piloted in 11 states in the US, including in federal, state, and municipal elections since 2018. In Denver, I administered a pilot in our municipal elections for military and overseas voters, where we saw participation increase significantly, and 100% of those participants who were surveyed said that they would prefer to use mobile voting technology in all elections in the future. As an elections administrator who's run elections in different states and under different voting models, I can attest to the efficiencies and the potential cost savings with mobile voting. In-person voting is often the most expensive method of voting to administer because of the amount of equipment that has to be purchased, physical polling locations that have to be secured, and the poll workers needed. In low turnout elections, like local and municipal elections, those costs can run into the hundreds of dollars per vote cast. Mail ballots are also expensive and time consuming, and those costs are on the rise due to the higher paper and postage costs. Mobile voting, once scaled, can be much more efficient and less costly, reducing the money spent on printing and postage and the time spent processing and tabulating mail-in votes. Importantly, mobile voting is only a transmission method. It does not replace existing audit and tabulation processes. Paper ballots are still printed and counted alongside other mail ballots, preserving auditability while reducing the administrative burden on election workers. For local jurisdictions operating under tight budgets, especially in off-cycle municipal elections, these efficiencies matter. Mobile voting offers a secure, transparent option that not only expands access, but also allows election administrators to allocate resources more effectively. The bill provides a thoughtful framework for innovation while preserving integrity. I respectfully urge your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buccaro. Ms. Gorton-Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for these moments to just talk in support of mobile voting. My name is Reverend Brenda Gorton-Mitchell. I'm an associate minister at the Metropolitan Baptist Church in Largo, Maryland, and I believe that any tool that can increase voter participation is essential. Municipal election turnout often lags as much as 30 points behind national elections. Mobile voting addresses very real barriers: the long lines, unreliable transportation, inaccessible polling places, demanding work schedules, and challenges faced by elders and people with disabilities. Providing municipalities the option to offer secure mobile voting is a step toward removing unnecessary obstacles, strengthening participation at the local level, which is necessary for the health of our democracy. And I would hope we would not be stopped by statements like "it's never been done before," or "this nation that's built on innovation and creativity wouldn't be as far along as we are." So we need to try it, give it a chance. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steiner. Kinch, pardon me.
That's okay. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Sam Kinch. I'm a resident of Crownsville, Maryland. I'm testifying as a 30-year veteran of the United States military and as a cybersecurity expert who spent years leading the integration of National Guard forces, cybersecurity forces into U.S. Cyber Command. As a military veteran, I know personally how difficult it can be to exercise the basic right to vote when you're stationed overseas. Far too many of our service members deployed abroad don't vote, frankly, not because they lack commitment, but because the process can be slow, complicated, and unreliable. When stationed overseas, I never knew whether my ballot was even counted. I was skeptical whether mobile voting could provide a solution. I spent my career defending critical cyber systems, identifying vulnerabilities. As a veteran and a cybersecurity professional, I could not support mobile voting unless it had strong systems integrity. However, after years of thorough review, I believe mobile voting can be secure. It can be transparent. Technology and security systems have evolved rapidly. We can now expand access without sacrificing our integrity. The new technology is transparent. It assumes bad actors are everywhere. As you heard in previous testimony, if there's a problem, the system is designed to fail loudly. It ensures that problems can be corrected, which is not the case with other forms of voting. HB 1066 provides Maryland municipalities the opportunity to use a responsible tool that has demonstrated over 300% increase in voter participation. It encourages our deployed members to vote. It creates additional resilience in our electoral processes, and it strengthens our voter trust. I respectfully urge a favorable report, and I thank you for your time and your consideration today.
Thank you all very much for your testimony. All right, seeing no questions from the committee, I do want to go back. There was, I believe, one additional person in person favorable, Julius Whaley. I don't know if they're in the room with us or not. Hi, good afternoon. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. It's an honor as this is my first time as a witness. My name is Julius Whaley. I live in Hyattsville, Maryland, and I am a senior in high school. I've lived in Maryland my whole life, and growing up, I always went with my mom to vote at my local elementary school. I remember seeing both elderly and disabled neighbors there coming in to vote, and a lot of the time without caregivers to help. It may seem small, but for people with limited mobility, getting to a polling place can be both a significant and physical and logistical burden. Yes, mail-in voting did expand access during COVID, but it also raised some concerns. We've seen ballots misplaced, drop boxes vandalized, and early on, drop boxes set on fire. These incidents, while not widespread, affect the public's confidence and should be taken seriously when we talk about voter access and security. We live in a digital world. Technology expands access in education, healthcare, and our daily lives as a whole. I believe we can apply that same innovation to voting, especially to aid our elderly residents, those with disabilities, and those without easy access to a polling location. Through my involvement with Civics Unplugged, serving as student body president at my high school, and my participation in youth-led civic initiatives across Maryland, I've seen firsthand how important participation is. Democracy works best when everyone, not just those who find it easiest to vote, have a voice. House Bill 1066 would allow cities to explore mobile voting as an additional option. To reinstate, this would not replace existing methods, but give communities flexibility to expand access responsibly. I respectfully urge you all to support House Bill 1066. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, and great job, and happy your first time testifying was in our committee, so thank you very much for your testimony and for being with us today. And seeing no questions from the committee, we will move on to our favorable with amendments. Braden Steiner.
Thank you, Madam Chair Wells and committee members, for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I deeply appreciate the opportunity to be before you here today. My name is Braden Steiner, and I'm an attorney with Disability Rights Maryland, the protection advocacy agency organization for the state. DRM's mission is to advocate for the legal rights of people with disabilities throughout the state. And one of those mandated purposes of DRM's legal work is to ensure that people with disabilities are able to engage with the voting process without fear of discrimination. As part of that mandate, DRM works to ensure that Marylanders with disabilities can fully and equally participate in the electoral process. With that being said, DRM submits this testimony in support of House Bill 1066 with the amendments I've specified. For Marylanders with disabilities, voting still remains far more difficult than it should be. House Bill 1066 would allow Maryland municipalities to opt in to secure mobile voting for local elections. Federal law, including the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Help America Vote Act, require that voting systems and polling places provide meaningful access to individuals with disabilities. But municipalities obviously still struggle to meet that burden. Yet practical barriers remain, and they prevent full participation in our democracy. In particular, many voters with print disabilities, including individuals who are blind, have low vision, or certain cognitive or dexterity impairments, are unable to mark a paper ballot independently and privately. Too often, these voters must rely on assistance from poll workers, family members, or aides, which can undermine the fundamental right to cast a private ballot. Secure mobile voting has the potential to address these barriers meaningfully. When implemented with strong safeguards, it can allow voters with disabilities to cast their ballots independently, privately, and securely, using assistive technologies that they already rely on in their daily lives. This legislation is not intended to replace existing voting options, but to expand access, ensuring that no voter is excluded because the current system fails to meet their needs. We respectfully request that the bill be amended to explicitly require accessibility for voters with disabilities, and I believe that this has happened already, and I just have not seen the final bill text. And with all that being said, Disability Rights Maryland supports the passage of this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll move on to our unfavorable witnesses. We have Susanna Goodman, and I believe virtual, again, we have Miss Susan Greenhall and Miss Liz Yakabuchi. Good afternoon, Miss Goodman.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Wells and members of the committee. My name is Susanna Goodman, and I'm at Common Cause on our voting rights team, and I'm speaking on behalf of our 18,900 members in Maryland. I urge an unfavorable report and I'm also speaking today for the Brennan Center for Justice. As you may know, Common Cause has long championed efforts to increase access to the polls in Maryland. We advocated for Election Day registration, automatic voter registration, early voting, and jail-based voting. However, HB 1066 would establish internet voting on voting systems for which there are no federal standards. 4 federal agencies, including DHS, the FBI, EAC, and NIST, have warned against it because of the clear security risks. Folks who want internet voting like to talk about how, since we bank online, we should vote online. Banking online is mobile, it is end-to-end encrypted, and banks spend millions to make it secure. But consumers using Zelle, PayPal, and other phone apps have lost millions to scams and hacking. Last April, New York Attorney General Tish James sued Zelle due to the security lapses that led to $1 billion in losses. Banks and consumers are stuck with these losses. With banks, it's seen as the cost of doing business. We should not accept the loss of votes as the cost of doing business. Internet voting is a very appealing idea, but it is not ready for prime time. Research should continue, but the systems must be vetted and scrutinized before they are authorized and deployed. At the polling place, you and I vote on voting machines that have been tested to federal standards. But for internet voting, it is the Wild West. There are no federal standards.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goodman. Seeing no questions from the committee, we'll move to our virtual unfavorables. As they come up, we have Susan Greenhall and we have Liz Yakabuchi. Hi, good afternoon, Ms. Greenhall.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify on 1066. I am the Senior Advisor for Election Security at Free Speech for People once again. And again, we work hard to make sure people have access to the ballot. We bring legal actions to ensure access. And so if we could recommend a favorable report for 1066, we absolutely would. But because online voting is just too insecure, we are asking the committee for an unfavorable report. Though they may seem robust, the security controls offered in 1066 will not ensure that ballots are secure, and the assertion that the technology has advanced to resolve these security threats is just not the case. Supporters have invoked the use of end-to-end verifiability as a safeguard that will protect their ballots, but the committee should know that Dr. Josh Benelo, the cryptographer and computer scientist that has invented end-to-end verifiability, has stated very clearly that this is not an effective safeguard for online voting. Dr. Benelo recently provided this testimony before the Washington State Legislature, and we can get you that video if that's helpful. I'd also like to address the argument that this can be done securely because states already allow it, but I also want to raise the history so that the committee can understand why this is an incorrect conclusion. In the 90s and 2000s, There was a time, Congress at the time had an active directive to the Department of Defense to build a secure internet voting system for military and overseas voters. And states passed laws to allow this with the reasonable expectation that the DoD would soon offer them a secure system they could opt to use. After multiple studies and recommended that the DoD advised against it, saying it couldn't make a secure system, Congress pulled the plug in 2015, but the laws were already on the books. Since then, there's been even more research that has been conducted by NIST, the EAC, DHS, NASEM, etc., that all agree online voting is not secure, including agreement with the Maryland Legislative Services on this question. We welcome your questions and the opportunity to provide any further information, including Dr. Benelow's testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Greenhalgh. Ms. Yakabuchi.
Committee members, again, my name is Liz Yakabuchi, and I'm with Public Citizen, a nonpartisan nonprofit with more than 40,000 supporters in Maryland. Online voting would undermine municipal elections in the state of Maryland. Internet voting is still insecure, and there is no known or foreseeable technology that can make it secure. 21 computer scientists, some of the most respected names in election security, agreed on this just a couple of months ago. 2024, 4 federal agencies assessed electronic ballot return to be high risk, and there are other documents that come to that same conclusion. In an environment where election officials are continually having to remind people that, quote, the certified voting system is never connected to the internet, that means that the risks associated with the internet are not present. I'm quoting from the SEB website here, current SEB website. How are voters supposed to trust municipal election results that include ballots cast over the internet? Online voting systems can crash, disenfranchising voters who depend on them. In 2021, the system used in the Australia state of New South Wales crashed, and 3 different elections had to be rerun. A similar thing happened in Ecuador in 2023, again, requiring elections to be rerun. Rerunning elections has costs to voter trust. Maryland generally requires voting systems to be certified by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. This bill would carve out an exception to that requirement. The EAC has not certified any online voting systems. For these reasons and others, I urge you to vote unfavorable on HB 1066. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both, Ms. Greenhalgh and Ms. Yakabuchi, for your testimony. Seeing no questions from the committee, this concludes our bill hearing for HB 1066. We'll move next to HB 964, Delegate Grammer. And you have a sponsor panel, Catherine Sullivan, David Morsberger, Ali Rock.
Ali Rock, was that it?
Ali Rock. Oh, wait, was that it? Okay, I missed it. Ha, ha, ha. Thank you very much.
I'll get started when you're ready, Madam Chair. All right, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 964, the Secure the Vote Act. House Bill 964 implements various ballot integrity measures in order to secure elections in the state of Maryland. In the case of Ian Roberts, it isn't exclusively about the fact that we have illegal aliens on our voter rolls. It shows a failure of the integrity of our actual system. We are told that illegal aliens cannot be on our voter rolls, but the thing that we are told cannot happen is happening. The system of self-attestation is being violated directly. We rely on list maintenance, but it is clear that, as Mr. Roberts remains on voter rolls after not voting, that list maintenance is not happening. Elections officials have been inconsistent with transparency. Redactions and corrected records show a clear slippage in record handling. Outside inspection of rolls is denied. The issuance of illegal ballots shows insufficient oversight. We have clear holes in the integrity of our election system. The Secure the Vote Act fixes that in several ways. The bill implements proof of citizenship at the time of voter registration. The bill implements voter ID. The bill eliminates ballot drop boxes. It requires voter registration for and prohibits illegal aliens from voting in municipal elections. The bill requires a pre-election voter roll integrity check And the bill requires signature verification on absentee ballots and limits absentee participation to actual absenteeism. The issues that we are told are not happening are clearly happening. There are clear voter integrity infractions across the country and in our state. We can more effectively protect ballot integrity and our electoral process by passing House Bill 964, the Secure the Vote Act. With that, I'd be happy to take questions, and I'd ask for a favorable report. You want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is Kate Sullivan. I'm the Director of Secure the Vote Maryland, and I'm here in support of HB 964, the Secure Vote Act of 2026. Before I begin, I want to address a common tactic used to dismiss citizen concerns about election administration, the conflation of assertion versus evidence. An assertion is a claim, evidence is fact. Every data point Secure the Vote Maryland submits to this committee is evidence, fully traceable and verifiable. For the past 5 years, our volunteers have knocked on doors, spoken directly with Maryland residents, and purchased official state voter rolls monthly in order to analyze them. We review the rolls for registration violations like deceased, duplicate, and moved voters, among other categories. We understand voter rolls are a dynamic system and represent snapshots in time. In a recent snapshot, we identified 238,488 registration violations. That is 238,488 potential vulnerabilities within our critical election infrastructure. In addition to this data, we can cite good old lived experience. How many in this room have received a ballot for a deceased parent or a moved son or daughter? Personally, just last year, I received 2 live ballots that I could have voted no problem. My point is, in fact, there are vulnerabilities in our system. Our system is only as secure as the safeguards that are built into it. HB 964 takes meaningful steps to close those vulnerabilities. I live in a safe neighborhood, but I still lock my doors at night. Security is not an accusation of wrongdoing. It is recognition of responsibility. HB 964 represents an opportunity to strengthen both the security of our system and the faith of the citizens it serves. For these reasons, I respectfully urge support for HB 964. Thank you so much.
Here we go. Hello, David Morseberger, Davidsonville, Maryland. I'm testifying in support of House Bill 964, Secure the Vote Act. Let me start with, we live in a world of criminals and fraudsters. Fraud and crime have occurred in the past and they will occur in the future. Let's start with this assumption that this is happening. And you heard that from 2 of the security experts earlier that says you start with the assumption of people are going to do bad things. Our government's job is to make it more difficult and hold the criminals accountable. President Obama declared our election system critical infrastructure while he was in office. Maintaining critical infrastructure requires a periodic, formal, and objective risk and vulnerability assessment and auditing starting with the assumption that fraud has and will occur. It's a likelihood of fraud and the impact if that fraud occurs. A comprehensive audit of our statewide voter registration system by an external independent source is required. I spent my professional career working with critical infrastructure, both performing similar audits plus evaluating and implementing solutions addressing audit findings. Mail-in ballot is just one simple example when it comes to assessing the risk and vulnerability. As an example, an independent Maryland team of volunteers found out between 15 and 32% of mail-in ballots were suspicious. The analysis was provided by the SBE and the legislature where no action was taken, hence the need for an independent analysis. Mail-in percentages have gone up 400%. It was 4 to 5% in 2016, 2018, and now it's around 25%. One huge vulnerability is loss of chain of custody in the process of mail-in ballots. Think about it, in processes for mail-in ballots. During in-person voting, it is against the law to help anyone vote unless a form is signed in advance. How do we know someone did not help or coerce when filling out a mail-in ballot? Signature box on an envelope is a swoosh is sufficient. Yeah. Yes, they signed the oath. So signature verification is a possible remedy or mitigation to reduce the likelihood of fraud. Please provide favorable report of HB 964, and I'm available to answer any questions on my verbal or written testimony.
Don't touch the button. Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Allie Rock for State Freedom Caucus Network. I'm here, we've heard the name Ian Roberts. I'm here to just tell the story of a Des Moines, Iowa superintendent who was picked up by immigration enforcement on a final deportation order that was almost a year and a half old last fall. The story is pretty wild though, because how does that even happen? You know, you look at the guy's LinkedIn and he's worked seemingly everywhere. Why didn't anyone do a background check? But after a day in the news, it appeared that he had roots in Maryland. So someone provided to Delegate Morgan, the chair of the Maryland Freedom Caucus, a traffic citation with his name, address, and date of birth. He was able to see that he was a registered voter in Maryland. In partnership with some conservative watchdog groups, we were able to obtain the public was able to obtain Ian Roberts' voter file through a public information request, showing not only that he registered to vote, not only did he receive ballots every election since 2020, but that he lied on his citizenship affidavit twice. In partnership with Secure the Vote Maryland, we asked for their take on the fact that Ian Roberts is registered receiving ballots but never voted, only to find he is not on the ballot tracking list anywhere. So Ian Roberts was discovered by complete accident and total fate, but he's the perfect spokesman for HB 964. For Marylanders to feel confident in the integrity of their vote, we must have documentary proof of citizenship, voter ID, absentee ballots returned to their original intent, and thorough regular list maintenance. For those reasons, I urge a favorable report on HB 964 to secure Maryland's vote.
Thank you very much. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mr. Morseberger. You cited, I was reading your testimony online, and you said in there that we have more registered voters than eligible voters in several areas or counties, over 100%. How did you come about that number?
Thank you for the question. It's a very simple calculation. First thing we did was we went out to the U.S. Census data that exists for even that the federal government uses for the apportionment of their representatives. And we were able to kind of calculate the number of citizens in Maryland that are over 18 that are U.S. citizens. Basically, they could be foreign born and became citizens. And we subtracted out the voters, the citizens who were foreign born and not citizens are here, undocumented here. We calculated that number. Then we went to the official Maryland State Board of Election data and used the number of active registrations in Maryland. A simple ratio gave us over 100% in multiple counties in the state of Maryland. In 10. So kind of just to reiterate, we used official federal data, U.S. Census data, and official Maryland State Board of Elections data to calculate that number.
Can I ask a follow-up? In your understanding, because obviously you're well-versed in Board of Election law, how does one in the state of Maryland come off of that active registrant voter list?
That's a very good question because it's really not clear in statute and it's not clear when you ask different Board of Election members. There is the, according to NVRA, you're supposed to use the U.S. Postal Service. There are examples where it's called the NICSI, the yellow, if you ever mailed anything and it was returned, you get a yellow sticky on the envelope that it was not addressed or undeliverable. They've decided to ignore those because they said the U.S. Postal Service is not trustworthy. So those individuals stay on the list. One way you can get off is the voter itself can sign a form that gets them off. We've looked at the NCOA data, the U.S. National Change of Address data, and see many Marylanders that have moved out of the state and they're still active voters and voting. We have looked across obituaries across the state and found, across the country, and found voters that are deceased. And that's difficult to get them off because, first of all, the dead individual cannot say I'm dead. And the other is they have said, the State Board of Elections have said places like legacy.com, which is where all funeral homes and places go, is not an official source to determine if a person has been deceased or not. And whenever we give this information to the state, we don't tell them, take them off the list. We say, you have a list of 4 million people. These are the thousands that you should probably look at first because we feel there's an issue there. And you need to further investigate and remove them if they're. But again, like talk about all those different situations, it's really not clear what is acceptable.
I asked that question because I thought that might be the reason for getting over the 100%.
Yes.
Thank you.
Delegate Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for your testimony, everybody. Ali, you mentioned Ian Roberts. The state board admitted that he actually was still listed as an active voter on the voter rolls. And, but they also claim, Jared DeMarinis also claims at the same time that he didn't vote. So how can the state make the claim that he didn't vote while at the same time being active on the voter rolls?
I'm going to defer to Peter.
I'll take that question. So that's a very interesting claim on the behalf of State Board of Elections that he, quote, didn't vote. Because we have PIA requested his underlying documents, which show very clearly that he requested a mail-in ballot 3 times for the 2024 primary, 2024 general, and then the 2025 special election. We have that data. That is incontrovertible evidence. What is also interesting is that Secure the Vote, like a lot of people in this room, can look into the mail-in ballot tracking system. This is not a mystery. A lot of people can do this. And Ian Roberts does not show up anywhere in that system, not as having requested a ballot, not as a ballot having been mailed or received. So I don't know where Jared would be getting the information that he didn't vote, because it would have showed up in that mail-in tracking system, and it's not, just like the fact that he requested his mail-in. So the system can't be trusted.
So the other question I have is, given the number of ballots that are mailed, that are out there, live ballots, in many cases, people that have moved or maybe they're deceased. My question is, since Maryland does have ballot harvesting, and we've legalized ballot harvesting, which means that with the proviso that you go door to door and collect ballots and have someone sign an affidavit giving you the authority to even mark the ballot for them or collect it, and then put it in a drop box, how do we know when lots of ballots are harvested and they're marked by a third party and then put in a drop box whether or not an affidavit was ever signed? Because there's no in-between party to actually check that. Is that so? I mean, I'm not really sure.
When we first started in 2022 with all the mail-in ballots, I went to the Board of Elections and asked them after the election, how many affidavits did you receive in the drop boxes? Mm-hmm. And their answer was 0.
Yeah, so what they're saying then is that every single ballot that was in the drop box, that were in the drop boxes, every single one was put in by the actual voter, which is obviously not believable.
If they followed the law.
And I can also say that in election law, it specifically delineates that if you collect ballots in ballot harvesting, which you're right, it's allowed in Maryland, you have to drop it off at the Board of Election, not in a drop box. Drop boxes are a direct violation of chain of custody, especially in, I've always argued you can have one or the other. You could be a ballot state, a ballot harvesting state, or a mail-in ballot, but you cannot have both.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you. We have
thank you so much.
One witness signed up unfavorable virtually. I don't believe that person is with us. No, that person's not here. So actually, Madam Chairman, that concludes the bill hearing.
That does conclude the bill hearing on HB 964. That concludes our bill hearings for today. However, we do have a moment in history from our good delegate, Von Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, it's been 49 years since one of our colleagues walked among the people in sandals and simple robes. He spoke in parables about seeds and soil, loaves and fishes. He taught that no one can serve two masters and that we must love our neighbors as ourselves. He gathered followers. He challenged authority. And in the end, he died on an electric fence. Please join me in recognizing our Vice Chair, Ken Kerr, for his unforgettable portrayal of Jesus in the Frederick Community College Playhouse production of Godspell.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Delegate Stewart.